You ain't even want to be in this shit. He get out of jail and make you his number two? I just wanted him to respect me. Okay, I want him to see me, to see I can hold down the family, man. I can. And Monet robbed me of that, but I still ain't trying to kill her.
From someone who was just portrayed as the epitome of intimidation and fear, beneath this tough exterior, we always knew Kane was a character who had more than just brute force. He was someone who just wanted respect. He wanted what was promised by Lorenzo towards the end of season 1, which was to lead the Tejada organization. He wanted to keep the family business to just family, which is ironically something we hear now Monet saying in the trailer for episode 5. She's finally going to acknowledge they're going to have to go back to being family first, because bringing Tariq into the Tejada operation has broken them apart, which I have to kind of disagree with. Just like Jeanette mentioned, since she's been living at the Tejada house for a few weeks, she started to realize she was the problem.
All this time I'm out here blaming Tariq for everything. But it's clear to me now, you're the problem.
But being in this house, over the past few weeks, I see it now. You the problem.
This was also something Kane realized in season 2, but at the end of the day, he's always been a mama's boy, and we are going to get into the mama's boy comment and this relationship with Monet in a bit more detail in this breakdown. I do feel there is a backstory which they haven't revealed just yet, but it's definitely coming soon. So, I'm also going to be running through some quotes from Woody McLean, which will definitely give us a better understanding of where we are. But let's start with this battle with Dru first and take a look at the history. Now, the rivalry between Kane and Dru is something that's been brewing since season 1. It also wasn't helped by the fact that Lorenzo was saying one thing to Kane but another to Monet.
Why does it have to be Dru?
Because he's the only choice. Kane is unpredictable, and you're too attached to Diana.
Being the eldest son in the house, he always felt as if he was the rightful heir to the throne. So, when Lorenzo was released, he had every right to be annoyed. He brought Dru closer pretty much straight away, pushed Kane out of meetings, and went back on his word. We also saw them in a bit of a scuffle in the Tejada house, which was definitely a foreshadow of things to come. What also didn't help was when Lorenzo was killed. Straight away there was a battle between the two brothers, and it was only a matter of time before we then saw them at it once again. Even if Kane was trying to be family first, he might have been trying to put the family first, but Dru was done, and the betrayal from him and Diana was always going to be the game changer. So going into season 4, it was just a waiting game until Kane found out what Diana and Dru did. Right at the end of 401, when they changed their story, he said something didn't add up, and he was going to get down to the bottom of it. And I did expect him to play detective and find out exactly what happened. And had they not been sent the Ring doorbell footage from Pinky, I do think eventually Kane would have put 2 and 2 together, because that's just what he does. But when it was revealed, all hell broke loose in yet another Tejada dinner scene. However, we all saw how he was conflicted in the immediate aftermath. He chased Dru and Diana, but stopped short in pulling the trigger, and that's because you saw it in his face. He couldn't believe that his own siblings did what they did. He's a character who's gone through a massive evolution. He's gone from being this selfish character, where he made a lot of moves for his own selfish gain, to being family first, which was thanks to Lorenzo.
I will do anything to protect my family, period. Whether they're right or when they're wrong, I write for them. Family first, huh?
We saw it in the immediate aftermath. Lorenzo might have gone, but Kane wasn't focused on getting revenge. He was focused on being there for his family and being family first. On the other hand, it was Dru who was being reckless by attacking the Russians. But in the aftermath of Kane finding out what Dru and Diana did, Kane agreed with Tariq. He knew Dru and Diana had to go for what they did. So did Tariq, and so did Monet. So the hunt was on, and it was only a matter of time before Kane caught up with Dru.
You do see why we did what we did, right?
No, I don't. That's our fucking moms.
And Lorenzo was our pops. How the fuck did she get away with doing what she did to us?
Now, during this conversation as Kane caught up to Dru at one of the Tejada's dead drops, we do have to look at both perspectives. Yes, Dru may have betrayed the family, and what him and Diana did had to be answered for. But what he said about Monet hit the nail on the head. He might have betrayed the family, but what did Monet do? What about all the lies that date all the way back to Zeke? How has Kane given Monet a pass for what they did to their father? And I do think what Dru said was 100% valid. Monet definitely isn't innocent. In fact, I think we can comfortably say she has to be the worst mother in the Power universe. We only have to look at what they've shown us through the flashbacks, how Monet pushed the life on her kids. On the other hand, at least Rock and Tasha tried to push their kids down the right direction, down the path of education and away from the streets. So, I do think what Dru said was valid. However, let's take a look at this from Kane's perspective. He said Dru had no idea how he felt when Lorenzo passed, and it ties in with something I mentioned in one of my breakdowns last week when I was discussing Detective Carter. We all grieve differently when it comes to the loss of a loved one. Carter was filled with bitterness, wrath, and anger. For Kane, he definitely felt the death of Lorenzo, especially because he started to understand him and his decision making. But he was also conflicted, because all he ever wanted was to be shown respect. He wanted to be the heir to the throne because he felt as if he deserved it, but also because the game is all he knows. Dru had art, Diana was able to pursue her education, but for Kane, this is all he had. This is all he's ever known and all he's ever been good at. And that's another reason why he was so annoyed when Lorenzo started to push him aside. When he was in prison, he found Mecca, he did all the work, albeit he was manipulated at the same time. Now, as Dru got the drop on his brother, Kane did warn him, if you don't pull the trigger, he's not going to stop until he does. And I do feel like he will regret not pulling the trigger, which is definitely something we are going to come back to in just a second, because I do feel we will be seeing round 2, but just before we get there, I do feel we have to talk about Kane's trigger point.
Oh no, I forgot. He's a fucking mama's boy. Always has been, always will be.
It's fucking pathetic. You're always gonna be a mama's boy.
Just like how Tariq hates being told he's similar to his father Ghost, Kane hates being called a mama's boy. That's his trigger point, although we haven't really been given a reason as to why he's a mama's boy. Why he's got this connection to Monet that Diana and Dru never had, which is something I do feel we'll see in a flashback pretty soon, or maybe in part 2 when Ghost returns in September. So far we've seen an in-depth flashback to help us understand what Monet had her kids doing when they were kids, how she taught Dru and Diana to lie, which in return came back to haunt her years later. But we've seen one which focused on Diana, we've seen another which was focused on Dru, but nothing for Kane so far. We did see a very brief flashback with Kane when Monet hid a piece in his baby seat, which was very similar to what Tasha had to do when she had Tariq and Raina. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a flashback that tells us why Kane is a mama's boy. And so I do want to take it back to a quote from Woody McLean, where he went into a bit of detail about his backstory after season 3. So this is what he said. I think it just comes down to the fact that Kane is a mama's boy. His backstory, which we've never really got a chance to talk about during the show, but she was there for him when something super significant happened in his life. It was just his mom. So he's always had an attachment to her. I wish they would have talked about it a bit more, but they never got across or had time for it. I think it's just the fact that he and his mom are just super tight. She was there for him at a time when he really needed her. I think that's where Kane is when it comes to his mother. So, having said that, they've never really had time to get into this backstory before, but considering they're now giving us these flashbacks in almost every single episode after episode 1, I do think we will get the answers we're looking for. Now, having said that, even though I do feel we will get the answers to Kane being a mama's boy, I do think he is done with that tag.
I ain't no mama's boy.
Dru poking him at the end of season 3 and also in season 4 really irritated him, and he also told Momma he's done, he's gonna be his own man. So, when we see Kane vs Dru round 2, which I do think we will at some point, the next time, he won't be taking orders from Monet to stand down, and there can only be one man standing come the end, which is also why I said Dru will eventually regret this moment. He'll regret not pulling the trigger when he had the chance, because when Kane comes back, he's definitely gonna do what he promised. So, that's a breakdown of where we are with Kane vs Dru, and how I feel we haven't seen the last of this battle just yet. I do feel like we will be in for round 2 eventually at some point in season 4, and when we do, who wins? I also feel like there are some unanswered questions in terms of Kane's backstory, and maybe that's something we'll see in a flashback in episode 5 or maybe in part 2. But drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section, especially on Kane's backstory. Why do you think Kane is such a mama's boy? Drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.